Senator Cantwell's SAFE Act. It's creating a federal framework for federal framework, while your Restore the College Sports Act leans more towards reining in NCAA. So why do you believe that maybe your approach is better for Washington athletes and fans?
Well, it's a good question, and actually Senator Cantwell and I have been working fairly closely on the issue of college sports reform. Actually, we talked at length this week. Obviously, we're on other sides of the aisle, but we share a concern that what's special about college sports is being lost in this attempted power grab by the SEC and the Big Ten, and that small and medium-sized schools will be left behind. So we're working together on the issue. What Maria's bill does is essentially set up a framework that would incentivize schools to look at bringing in increased revenue. I think that's a good thing. Okay. We're both dealing with how do you have a governance structure that makes sure the small and medium-sized schools aren't left behind. But what we're really trying to do is slow down the effort from the SEC and the Big Ten and make sure everybody has a say.
Now, her standard with this bill, it would allow for athletes to transfer twice without sitting out for a year, and then immediately if their sport is cut. So my question for you is, do you support this approach? I mean, or do you think it's something that raises stability, or where do you think this element to her bill lands, in your opinion?
Well, I think you're right that people really feel there's a lot of chaos in college sports with this unfettered free agency and the idea that people have no salary cap. So essentially, this is constant turmoil of people transferring all the time. I would prefer that you could have one transfer before there was a need to set out. It's actually something I've talked about with with Gonzaga basketball coach Mark Few. He's someone that thinks one transfer would be good. Additional causes a lot of chaos. But that's something we'll discuss with Senator Cantwell. I would just reiterate that she and I are working closely on the issue, and it really isn't a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's something we can work together in a bipartisan fashion. Can
you dive more into that? I mean, speaking to the fact that this is a Washington issue that we're feeling heavily with the dismantling of the Pac-12. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, we here in Eastern Washington, certainly with the Pac-12 falling apart, it's been unfair to WSU, and it really has caused a huge financial strain on the university and our local economies. Game day in Pullman is a big deal for taxpayers and businesses in Eastern Washington. And we also want to make sure that schools like Eastern Washington and Gonzaga can continue to compete at their highest levels. One of the challenges with the way sports is going is, Mark Few and Gonzaga have built up this amazing basketball program. But if the SEC and the Big Ten are allowed to have more TV revenue and higher salary caps than Gonzaga can potentially reach, it's just not fair to GU, because they've built it the right way through hard work and talent and the community coming together. And if Kentucky or Florida or Alabama on the basketball side can just come in and buy their players, then it's going to take away what's special about Gonzaga basketball. So, that's why we call it restoring college sports, because what's made it so great and so important for our communities. And the real pillars that should be guiding this legislation is, one, student athlete welfare, and there's a big student in that piece. This is about academics, but also on competitive balance for schools. Everybody needs to feel like they have a chance and that can win. What's some of the things that's going on with the SEC and the Big Ten, it would be like in the NFL if the NFC East had a higher salary cap than the AFC West. Well, if you had that, then folks in the AFC West wouldn't think that they could compete, and their fans would lose interest. And so similarly, we need to keep competitive balance in college sports. And because if we don't, what will happen with football, because football is so important as the dominant sport on college campuses, is that it will draw resources away from those Olympic sports, and it'll be volleyball players, baseball players, and the rest of the sports that will suffer as a result. So there really is a lot at stake here, and I'm very pleased to be working with Senator Cantwell. It's somewhat ironic we're working together. I ran against her for U.S. Senate 12 years ago, but politics make strange bedfellows, and certainly there was no leftover harm from that race, and it's fun to work with her now.
So the intent behind both your bills are similar, and you share in the support of making changes and protecting those student athletes, while also kind of trying to find some sort of standardization.
Yeah, and just to be clear, there's another effort. There's the Baumgartner-Cantwell approach over here. Mm-hmm. There's another approach by the commissioners of the SEC and the Big Ten and the big money schools that are really being driven by ESPN and Fox Sports from a very corporate approach, and they want to do things like sell college sports teams to private equity funds. I'm very uncomfortable with that. It really destroys what is traditional and good about college sports. And so really the difference between the Baumgartner and Cantwell approach, even though we're not quite all the way aligned, is quite different from the approach of what the SEC and the Big Ten is doing. So obviously there's a lot of game to play on these issues, and I'm trying to reach out to the White House and try to get President Trump on board with something more similar to our approach.
So fair to say, in short, you support Cantwell's bill?
Yes, the spirit of what she's trying to do is very close to what we're trying to do, and it's very different from what the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to do. And again, I would just ask everybody to think about what is special about college sports. We want our high school sons and daughters to be able to participate in a range of sports. It should be about more than just big-time college football and college basketball. And we want to have competitive balance. So what makes it special about game day in Cheney or Pullman or here on campus at GU, that's maintained. And so there's a lot at stake, and we'll continue to work for it.
There's one other element to Senator Cantwell's bill that I wanted to ask you about. Let's see, so both your bill, the Restore College Sports Act, and Cantwell's bill aim to crack down on that Wild West NIL deals. Where do you think her SAFE Act maybe goes too far or not far enough when it comes to regulating agents and the pay-for-play element?
Well, I think on that aspect we're pretty close. The difference of the approach is, I think Senator Cantwell bill needs a bit more framework around what the SEC and the Big Ten can do on the power structure. So I think we need something to replace the NCAA. Senator Cantwell's bill works within the confines of the NCAA. I think the NCAA has proven to be feckless and just can't do the job of governance. So I'm urging the president to work with Congress to set up a new governing body for college sports, and that would be the main difference from our bills.
Yeah. How is that going? Where are we at with that bill?
Well, it's an ongoing effort. If you're following this issue nationally, there's a national figure that's a head regent at Texas Tech and former football player for Mike Leach. And of course, I was very close friends with Mike Leach, but his name is Cody Campbell. Cody Campbell is running advertisements nationally to try to push back on the SEC and the Big Ten. So I talk to Cody quite frequently. I talk to Senator Cantwell quite frequently, and between the three of us, we're trying to work with the White House. Cody has been appointed by President Trump to be on his College Sports Commission, so there is a direct link there as well too. But again, there's 435 members of the House, 100 members of the Senate. They all have universities in their districts, and what I'm trying to get everybody to do is to rise above just looking at what's important for their schools and think about the entire system, because if we go down this direction of a second NFL and only the biggest schools can make the most amount of money, it will ruin what's special about college sports.
On the scale of, support, need more support, not getting it, where is this bill leaning right now?
Well, it's doing well. I mean, it's a sausage-making process. Certainly, the president has a lot of influence on these things, and so I'm really directing most of my efforts is trying to work with the White House on the issue and see if we can get them on board. Obviously, the SEC and the Big Ten are very wealthy conferences. They have very high-powered, very well-paid corporate lobbyists in D.C., so they're working those members from the South and in the Midwest on those schools, and then I'm trying to work with some other folks. So again, there isn't really a Republican or Democrat divide on the issue. It really is, just what model of college sports we like. And I wish, quite frankly,
a new era for
it is.
Sports, yeah.
I wish the University of Washington, quite frankly, was a better partner for the regional schools in terms of what they've done. It's caused so much damage when the University of Washington left, because it basically took $30 million away from Washington State University with the destruction of the Pac-12, and is going to have ramifications for Eastern Washington as well too. So right now, University of Washington is very much on the Big Ten private equity plan, and so we're trying to use our powers of persuasion as a member of Congress to try to get them back in line with a little more common sense.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think those are all the questions I have. I guess in short, I will throw out
I'm glad that you're following I think it's cool you're following the issue like you are. Good for you.
I mean, our viewers care about it, right? I mean, we have how many? Well, and Gonzaga's joining the Pac-12 in the next season too. So I mean, even more fans are going to be concerned about what's the future of college sports.
It is one of the things that sort of, for those of us that want to reform this system, it's actually hopeful that some of the SEC schools are struggling with dealing with NIL right now. So just
a shared obstacle.
angst,
Maybe.
right?
Yeah,
Because the fact that college volleyball players and Olympic sport athletes are being sent coast to coast is absurd. It's terrible for the student athletes. It's not realistic, and the players and the schools realize it. But the question is whether you can put Humpty Dumpty back together again with these TV contracts. And what I've reiterated all along is that it shouldn't be corporate television executives at ESPN and Fox Sports making these decisions. These are public universities funded by taxpayers. They're highly subsidized public goods, and they should be regulated like them. And so there's a real fork in the road. Is college sports going to go the way of private equity and investment bankers? I mean, they're even talking about having foreign equity funds of foreign countries from places like the Middle East and the Persian Gulf purchase college sports teams. So actually next week I'll be introducing legislation that would prohibit private equity funds and foreign entities from purchasing college sports. And it seems so crazy even just to hear that you would have to have a bill on that issue, but really that is the state that it's in. So again, I always say we have one NFL, we don't need two. What we need to do is restore what's special about college sports.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I will ask about the shutdown, though.
Sure.
I mean, I think the perspective that viewers do always want to hear from their representative when we're in this time is, are we working to a solution? What is your sense of the conversations on Capitol Hill? Where are we at? Is there a good faith effort to find a solution here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I definitely want the shutdown to end. It should have never started. I mean, there are ongoing budget negotiations, and what I joined Republicans in doing is offering to continue Biden-level current spending while the bigger budget negotiations go on. Obviously, some Democrat leaders really feel a ton of pressure from their base that they're not fighting hard enough against President Trump, and they've decided to put a stake in the ground and fight over the shutdown. I don't think it's great for the country. You know, from what I know, shutdowns don't work out for anybody, and so.
And you've taken a stance yourself as well. I just learned that you're you're withholding pay for.
Yeah. So you know, under a shutdown, our military members wouldn't be paid. So as long as our military members won't be paid, I'm not going to be paid. I'm not going to take my paycheck during that time, even though we didn't cause the government shutdown. But I still think it's just to try to frame things up. But there are some important things at stake. For example, federal flood insurance can't be sold right now. So if you were in a flood zone, a lot of places in the Southeast, it would stop your house sale potentially from going through. Obviously, once we get to the 15th, there's going to be military members not getting paychecks. And then there's going to be other important federal government employees that are being laid off. So rather than doing the shutdown, we should continue the budget negotiations and come back together and do this continuing spending resolution until it can all get worked out. So that's my hope. And if there's any of my Democrat colleagues from the U.S. Senate listening to this interview, hopefully they'll take a step back and do the right thing.
The administration's even pointing, saying it's the Democrats that's halting progress on balancing the budget. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do agree with that, but you know, obviously there's a lot of back and forth finger pointing on these issues, but the real thing that we just want to do is get it solved and get back to being reasonable governance. There obviously are some very large philosophical differences between Republicans and Democrats, but we can work through those issues. And against the entire backdrop, people have to remember that, you know, America's $37 trillion in debt, and we have a 20% budget deficit. So we have real spending constraints that we have to look at to be responsible for future generations. And so I think we can come up with a good budget and get the shutdown finished and get back to work. That's my hope.
Thank you very much.
Okay.